What we currently do is it goes into the sewer fund, and that's what we use it for. But it's not a separate dedicated account. It's actually more commonly used by sewer districts like Central Weber, because they can only have so much in their general fund, where their sinking or their replacement costs will far exceed those type of projects. The most recent expansion that they're talking about is 60 million. Is that right, Mayor? Mm-hmm. And that's much more than they're operating. So it would exceed the rainy day limits imposed by the state. So they create this, which is a fixed. It can only be used on that. I don't know of many municipalities that do use a sinking fund, but it is a tool that's open to us.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Trent? Thank you very much for the report. Appreciate it.
Welcome.
Appreciate all you do in the city.
Thanks.
Good job, Trent.
Thanks.
Next item is the annual planning report. Our presenter will be Rob Scott, our planning director.
Thank you, Mayor, council members, and audience. It's an opportunity each year that we have to report to the City Council regarding our activities as it relates to the planning function within the city. And I would like to start out by talking about the significance of when you look at the future of any organization, planning is a significant component of it. And the rock foundation of all of that, in my mind, is the collaboration that goes on. We have a very dedicated staff that ably make sure that things happen the way that they should, with Brandon Bell and Lynn Bexell, and now we have an intern, Kai Johnson, that is also of assistance. But in addition to that, we have a great team of other individuals within the various departments that we collaborate with on a regular basis, and certainly we couldn't be near as successful as we are without the leadership of our city manager and city attorney, John. But it's a very significant thing that takes place, and to have an atmosphere in any organization where that collaboration can not only, sometimes it has to occur, but because of people's recognition that it takes place on an ongoing basis. It's one of the reasons why I thoroughly enjoy being a part of this organization. So that includes not only the Planning Commission, other departments, other agencies, but also our very dedicated Planning Commission, and also you as a City Council. It gives us the leadership, along with Mayor Chugg, as far as giving us direction on where we should be heading as a community and as a department to hopefully do some of this important work, which is furthering the future of this city by implementing the general plan, which identifies our goals and policies for land use within our community. In our report, we've given you lots of facts and figures and examples of projects that have been ongoing. I'll just highlight a couple of them. One is that we presented and had the council adopt some 13 ordinance amendments this last year. That in and of itself is a pretty significant number, with the types of changes that need to take place with respect to standards. One of the more significant one was the revision to our grading and drainage standards, a very important aspect of public safety. Also, current planning activities, lots and lots of permits that come through our shop, including some 21 subdivisions with over 201 subdivision lots that were recorded. So we've got a lot of others that are being processed, but 201 recorded. That is a very significant number relative to that. We identified for you in my cover memo some of the things that are listed as far as things for this upcoming year. Some of them we've already accomplished. We've adopted an ADU amendment, accessory building setbacks, and also menu board signs. Those were all adopted already. We'll be working on in conjunction with the new state law, we were in training today regarding the update of our general plan as it relates to our housing element. So that's a very significant thing. We're also working on complete streets, policies, streetscapes, and need I say more? The form-based code is on for public hearing tomorrow night with the Planning Commission, a very significant piece. One other shout out I'd like to give, and that is to our planning commissioners. This year, I was approached by one of our commissioners, Lisa Arner, who was involved in a school project and was asking me, gee, have you got a project that I could assist you on? And I said, well, we're in the process of writing our annual report. So she is the primary author of our report. So if you see her, you can congratulate her. I think she did an outstanding job of putting together a summary of the kinds of activities that we're involved with. So on behalf of the Planning Department, we appreciate your support. And if you have any questions about the report, I'm here to answer them for you.
Any questions for our planning director, Rob Scott?
Doesn't look like we put you to sleep, so that's a good thing. Not yet, anyway, right?
Not yet.
Wait till later.
Okay, you can just remain there. We'll move on
Thank you,
to
Mayor.
number 4, discussion to consider a rezone to property located at 430 East, 1625 North, from suburban residential RE20 to commercial C2.
So,
Presenter
John,
will be Rob Scott, our planning director.
thank you, Mayor and Council. This particular item before you is a legislative matter. And as you know, legislative decisions are policy matters. And as a part of that, Planning Commission is mandated by state law as well as our own ordinances that they need to give you a recommendation, which they have done, and I'll describe that in more detail in a minute here. But examples of legislative actions are amendments to our general plan, the zoning map, which is what we're talking about tonight, and land use text amendments. Typically, the criteria for making a decision regarding legislative matters requires compatibility with the general plan and our existing codes. So we'll be giving you some relationship to that. So we've got, that's the one from the report. Have we got one that's the exhibit from the actual ordinance?
I don't see it in the folder. I can go and see if I can find the planning drive.
Okay, well, let's just leave, we'll relate to that. So this particular property is outlined in black. You can see 1625 North. Is this East-West Street? This is Washington Boulevard to Walker Cinemas. This is the Hart Plaza building out here, and then in the rear is a vacant parcel. The Cold Springs Village is the project that's just to the east. So what's taking place relative to this? Is that initially this was one parcel with the Hart Plaza, and that was developed and has the frontage on the east, I should say the west side of this property. This no longer is in the hands of the family who owns the eastern parcel. They are interested in having this rezoned from RE20 to C2 in order to allow for a commercial development. In the application, there's oh, thanks, John.
That's the one.
Yep. There's a site plan that is projected for eventually that would go through our site plan review process. And so that has not occurred and won't occur until we have the zoning completed relative to that. A couple other things that I want to make mention of is that this street 1625, this is the last remaining vacant parcel on this stretch of roadway with the theater here. Potentially the theater will be doing some expansion in the future. We don't know when that will take place. To the north, we have a fairly large vacant parcel. It's not totally vacant. There's a home, but there's a fair amount of land that may be developed at some point in time as well. One of the things that I wanted to point out to you is that we discovered, if you can see this blue line, more clear for you. This blue line is what is being proposed to be rezoned. We discovered that the zoning map actually has the RE20 extending over on the Walker Theater parcel. And so in addition to this piece being rezoned, we're also recommending that this additional area also as a cleanup item take place as part of this ordinance. So does anybody have any questions about that? I think it's pretty straightforward. We had an opportunity to meet with folks from the Walker Theater, and I don't know that they were overjoyed, but they were thankful that the city was trying to look out for them relative to that. In addition to that, there's a number of goals and policies that are in our general plan that relate to the review of rezonings. I'm not going to go through, it's a page and a half of policy matters. I can let you know that there's consistency within those policies associated with this particular request. One other thing is that as part of the form-based code review and what have you, it was determined by the Planning Commission that they didn't see that this parcel was a candidate to be included with the form-based code. If later on the applicant, as they proceed with their development and what have you, as that comes about, they can certainly request it if they desire to do that. So what are your considerations for tonight? Is the proposal consistent with the general plan? Does the proposal meet the North Ogden zoning ordinance standards? How does the proposal relate to the zoning and land use policy guidelines? And is this property a candidate for the form-based code? The Planning Commission unanimously, after holding their public hearing on a 7-0 vote, found the proposed rezone from RE20 to C2 is consistent with the general plan and recommends adoption by the City Council. So, Council, do you have any further questions for me?
Rob, it's not a question about rezoning as much as just something to consider when they decide to develop that. If I remember, I drove through this neighborhood a while back, and there was not an outlet going this way yet, or there was an outlet going south. And that just has me, if that becomes busier, that just has me a little bit concerned. Now, maybe they haven't finished that development, and I know it shows an outlet going there, but it wasn't completed when I drove through there, I don't know, a month ago or something like that. Mm-hmm. And so I'm not opposed to the rezone at all. I'm just, when we go to develop it, if that gets really busy down there's not a way to get out other than just going Washington.
To the south, there is going to be another connection that will eventually go through off to Washington Boulevard.
Okay.
It's about 1525, if I recall.
Well,
In fact, you're going
I was going to say, aren't we talking about it later?
Yeah, you are. It's actually, Mr. Skadden's here as part of the Cooperstown project. That roadway will actually extend across his project. So it's just, I guess can you go up a little bit, John? Does it include?
I don't think it shows
did
on
it go
this.
that far? Certainly does
There we
here.
go.
So here's the cinemas. Can we blow it up just a hair? You can see this stub street right here. Hello. There we go. This stub street is going to, as part of the Cooperstown project, is going to extend to Washington Boulevard. So you're spot on.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm. Any other questions, council? Thank you.
Okay.
I got one quick one.
Yeah,
That
sure.
road 1625, I'm trying to remember if that's it.
Yes.
Is that a city street or is that?
Yes.
Okay.
But the ones going into the subdivision.
In the
I don't believe
subdivision
are.
aren't, right.
No, those are private streets.
So it's our
but
city
this
street to the cul-de-sac,
This is a
roundabout.
public street here, right there.
Just to the roundabout?
I think it actually is on a little bit to the west is their actual property.
Okay.
So council in the ordinance, it actually identifies the property outlined in red. So in your recommendation, we just need to change that to blue for purposes of the ordinance.
Go Cougars. Just saying.
Okay, the meeting is open for public comment on this particular item. Seeing none, we'll move on to discussion and/or action to consider an ordinance to rezone the property located at approximately 430 East, 1625 North from suburban residential RE20 to commercial C2.
Do we have an ordinance number?
2019-06.
I'll make a motion that we approve ordinance 2019-06 as presented by Rob Scott regarding the rezone 430 East, 1625 North from residential to a C2 as outlined in blue. Does that work?
I'll second that.
Okay. We had a motion by Councilman Barker to approve the ordinance to rezone the property located at 430 East, 1625 North from suburban residential RE20 to commercial C-2. It's been seconded by Councilman Severing. Any others? Councilman Turner, sorry.
That's all right.
I heard an echo down there. Any other questions or discussions? Then we'll move with the voting with Councilwoman Stoker,
Yes.
Councilman Swanson,
Yes.
Councilman Barker,
Yes.
Councilman Severing,
Yes.
Councilman Turner.
Yes.
Motion passes. Thank you. Next item is discussion on Cooper's Town Apartment and Annexation. The presenter will be Rick Skadden, the developer. Welcome.
Thank you, Mayor, Council, staff. Thanks for having me here tonight. My purpose tonight in working with Planning Department and also with Ogden City on our project, if I may, I did prepare because it has changed slightly since our last request. May I approach and hand these out? Here was the original request to annex the property on the south side of our project from Ogden City to North Ogden City. The letter was requesting and reasons of why we felt that would be the best for the project and also the city. In dealing with Ogden City, they first, and that's why this originally was going to exclude one of the parcels, of which I highlighted in orange. The parcel was to remain in Ogden City because they felt like they wanted to create that to be a commercial area, of which now they have backed off of and have suggested we go ahead and take the whole parcel. And I've been there 3 different times to try and form an application from Mr. Call's direction. They have instructed me that it needs to come, and Mayor Chug and Mr. Call also accompanied me to a meeting with Mayor Caldwell. They've instructed me that the city council is to request by letter from North Ogden to go into Ogden for me to pursue that with Ogden City, of which right now they're stating they are committed to, but that's the process they want to see happen.
So council, what we need is essentially, if you think this is okay, this is what will be called a boundary line adjustment or a municipal boundary adjustment. And both city councils would pass an ordinance authorizing the boundary line to move to incorporate these 2 parcels. And Ogden City is just asking that we write an official letter from the council that says, we're in support of this, let's start the process. And then they'll do what they need to do. We'll pass an ordinance, they'll pass an ordinance, and we have to get the lieutenant governor's office involved. And then then it'll be done. So it's similar to an annexation, but quicker and, yeah, because it's quicker.
That makes me laugh. I'm fine with it.
Well, and if I may, working with planning, we can also, with that process started, Rob and staff there would be, we have drawings, we've changed it up. The drawing you have of the plat is actually changing them under the direction of planning, which we support. But that just gives you an idea of the location of trying to bring that in and making it. Also, I'll add to that, I think it'll help with the storm drain as I'm working with, goodness, I'm drawing a blank, with the lady across the street to help the drain proceed down the project that the townhomes across the street so it gets down to the Mud Creek Basin. So we're going to participate in that financially. The developer of that project, whom y'all know is Eric, is going to participate, and then the cities. We've come to an agreement to make that. So I think overall, all the utilities, everything becomes the cities, and I think overall will benefit the city in the long run. So I'm asking for that support with Ogden City to advance that conversation from a letter from the council.
So, council, if you're okay, then the mayor and I will get a letter put together and sent to Ogden City saying we're okay starting this process, and then we'll work on finding out exactly what the lieutenant governor's office needs, because they need to look at the legal description, make sure it verifies and matches exactly what their understanding of the boundary between these two cities is, and then both of us would pass an ordinance adopting the new boundary. So that's when the official action would happen, and it would be everything happened, but more likely it'll be maybe a month or two.
I think Rick picks all the difficult properties.
Yes, I do. I do.
And
Seems
just
to follow me.
and just
I
as
follow it. I don't know which.
just as a reminder on this Stormline project that was referenced, so it runs from currently over in you can see the road on the kind of road that angles. Typically most developments put in a 15-inch line. That's kind of the minimum size for storm lines. It was upsized through that development when it was done 15 years ago. It'll be upsized through the Cooperstown development. It's already been upsized under the street and through the townhomes that are to the west of there, in anticipation of essentially carrying much of the city's stormwater out to the Mud Creek Basin. So, and in those type of projects, the city pays for the increased cost to install from a 15-inch to whatever size we went. I think this is a 30-inch pipe.
I believe the numbers we're doing 18, and you're going to pay up size to 36.
Yes. So it's, it's incrementally a little bit more money. It's not double. It's a little bit cheaper to upsize because you already have to dig a hole, whether it's 18 inches or 36 inches, but the hole gets wider and the pipe gets bigger. So.
I'm okay.
I think that's great.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for coming.
Unfortunately, you'll probably see a little bit of me in the next little one.
It was painless, wasn't it?
Thank you very much.
Next item on the agenda is discussion and action to consider an ordinance to approving the North Ogden City tentative budget for fiscal year 2019-2020. Our presenter will be Evan Nilsson, our finance director. Evan.
Thanks, Mayor and Council. We're grateful to be to the point where we're proposing approval of the tentative budget. The state law requires that the City Council adopt a tentative budget at its first meeting in May, or before its first meeting in May. So that's what we're proposing tonight. We've been through a lot of budget discussions, and I've included in the council packet a staff report that summarizes the tentative budget proposals, as well as the actual tentative budget document. We'll walk through a few slides here on this presentation. John, if you want to jump to the next slide. Here's our budget calendar, tonight we'll adopt a tentative budget. On May 28th, we'll have the required public hearing. We're putting a notice in the newspaper to let the public know about that. And anybody that wants to make comments about the budget will have an opportunity to do so at that meeting on the 28th. And then,
And on that note, council, you had asked specifically on this year's budget, and I think moving forward that we hold the hearing on a night before the budget's required to be approved, so the council has time to adjust and make changes, and just give a little more time. So Evan responded and scheduled it for the last meeting in May.
yep, and that gives us a couple weeks before we're proposing final budget adoption on June 11th. So that's our plan. We'll also approve a property, or I'll ask you to approve a property tax rate at that meeting. At this point in the budget, we are planning on accepting the certified property tax rate that the county will calculate. That's, still open for discussion if it needs to be, but in the budget, we have not programmed a property tax increase. So that's how things currently sit. Okay, next slide. So the budget in the packet represents the budget for all of these funds. All the city funds are included in the proposed tentative budget, as well as budgets for the CDA and RDA funds. Those budgets will be approved in a separate meeting of the redevelopment agency after we do the city's regular budget. Okay, next slide. We talked about this budget at our last meeting, and since that time we've made some adjustments. This table summarizes the adjustments that have been made. They're primary adjustments, some related to market and merit increases. Some are related to certifications. One in particular was just overlooked that was included in the recommendation that the council had made originally, but was not included. So the total increase there is $9,254. In the general fund, we were able to reduce some other personnel expenditures, and then utilize some surplus that was remaining in the general fund budget. In the water, sewer, storm, and solid waste funds, we increased our estimate on interest revenue. We're getting a lot more interest lately than we had been in the past, and so we made some small adjustments to those to make that work. And we made minor adjustments to the motor pool funds also. So all of the funds are balanced, and they contain the proposals that we've talked about. Go to the next slide. So we just made a bullet list of the various budget proposals, I guess the major budget proposals that are included in the budget. So we'll just kind of walk through this. First is personnel proposals. We have a new full-time events coordinator, a new part-time code enforcement community resource officer, a part-time parks position moving to full-time, the 401k additional 3%, and then market and merit wage adjustments. Next slide. General proposals, we've included funding for the update to the city code. We've put $120,000 in as discussed at the last council meeting. So that's what we're estimating, but the project would be bid out and proposals evaluated, so we would be able to, we may recognize a lower price on that, but we've also included portable and in-car police radios. And then we've made some adjustments to the way we do the motor pool funds, where we have segregated budgets for vehicle parts and fuel, and that's to help us get a more accurate cost on what we spend for those expenses, where the budgets for those will be recognized in the various departments rather than everything in the motor pool fund. Excuse me. Okay, next slide. Equipment proposals, we have a map scanner in the budget, continuation of our vehicle rotation program. It seems like that program has been working pretty well during this first year, so Dave manages that and will continue doing that, and it's helping us to recognize a significant amount of savings in our vehicle costs. We have a hydraulic press for the shop, 2 Parks mowers, a Polaris Ranger for the Parks Department, and then a stormwater basin tractor and mower. Next slide. Now we have a list of the capital projects that are included in the budget. The Campbell Barn relocation, skate park enhancements, Barker Park Amphitheater Phase 2, Parks Building minor remodel, Police Building feasibility study, picnic tables at North Ogden Park, room at Lomanview Park, and a surveillance system for the city facilities.
So, council, that Barker Park Amphitheater Phase 2 is the amount that you've approved in this year. It's going to start in June and probably finish in August. So we have to carry the money through the years. But at final budget, we'll show you that we're spending exactly what was authorized, and we'll, in fact, as promised, we'll bring back those items for you to approve, most likely at next meeting. The actual shopping list of this is what's being recommended, and make sure the council's okay with those specific items.
Next slide. We've also included road maintenance, our typical repaving sort of projects. The 450 East and Washington Boulevard widening project, street lighting along Washington Boulevard, the White Rock debris basin, that project is already ongoing and will continue into the next fiscal year. The Public Works Basin expansion in the Storm Fund, 3 PRV stations in the Water Fund, pressure reducing valves. Is that what that is, John?
Yes.
PRV, okay. The new water reservoir, that project has been in the current year budget, and it's still in the planning and design stage. So we've included that as a continuation of the project that's already begun. We've also got well house upgrades in the water fund and continuation of the sewer relining project. So that's the list for capital projects. It's a lot of projects, but we've been able to include those in the budget. I think a lot of those are possible because of the effort that the council has made to fund asset repair and replacement. So we were fortunate to be able to do that without going into debt. Okay, next slide. We talked about utility rates at the last meeting. This table is the same table that we presented before. So across the various utilities, we're proposing $2.86 of an increase to the base rates. We also talked about doing some adjustments to the non-residential rates, and staff is still working on the analysis of how that would be calculated, and so those adjustments will be discussed when we propose approval of the fee schedule in June. But these utility rates are what we've proposed, taking effect in July, and they would be applied to the base rates of all the utility accounts. Part of these rate adjustments fund operations. You can see that $1.67, and then $1.19 of the increase is to fund future asset repair and replacement in several of the funds. So that's the summary of what we're proposing in the tentative budget. We have an ordinance that we would propose that you approve to adopt the tentative budget. We're also happy to answer any questions if you have any questions that you'd like to discuss at this point.
Questions from the council?
Annette, what's the ordinance number on this one?
2019-07.
I recommend that we approve ordinance number 2019-07, approving the North Ogden City tentative budget for fiscal year 2019-2020.
Second.
A motion's been made by Councilman Severing to approve the tentative budget for 2019, 2020. It's been seconded by Councilwoman Stoker. Begin the voting with, any other questions or discussion? Begin the voting with Councilman Swanson,
Yes.
Councilman Barker,
Yes.
Councilman Severing,
Yes.
Councilman Turner,
Yes.
Councilwoman Stoker.
Yes.
Motion passes.
And council, just so you remember, this is just formally accepting the document. It'll now be published as the tentative budget, and that will allow residents to know this is where we're at, as well as individual council members, and, you know, tweaks and things. It might be helpful to, you know, send those all from the council to the mayor and Evan, if you have something that comes up. But then also, you know, if residents have stuff to you, don't hesitate to pass them along as you feel appropriate.
Well, Mayor, I just have one comment on the budget. I appreciate what John said there, but I think as a council and in the future, the council needs to really look hard at, and then, you know, taxes. Everybody hates raising taxes, but when we started this budget, we had a $600,000 deficit, and because of the cuts and everything that the staff came up with and we discussed as a council and stuff. But there's things that this city is going without, and we haven't had tax raise since, was it 2002 or something? 2005, so it's been 14 years. I mean, it raises my taxes too, but I think there's just something that, this year we were able to avoid it, but it's gonna have to happen. So just, the future councils, it's gonna have to happen. So we just need to think about it.
Maybe good to do, instead of just giving accepting the certified tax rate, whatever it's called, where we
From the county, you
keep
mean?
it the same as last year's. Because that increases revenue a little bit, but it doesn't, we're not raising taxes.
You're talking maintain the rate?
Maintain, that's what yeah. I gotta learn all this new jargon.
If the council is interested in even considering that, then we should, you know, there's a big process that we have to go through, so.
And I don't know, I mean, I don't know if we need to do it this year, since you've done such a great job of
Well,
making
like,
all the numbers work.
you know, like I said,
Yeah.
it's something that needs to be
Yes,
considered
I
and thought
agree.
about and discussed openly. And you know, I mean, this is a tentative budget. I'd love to hear what the, you know, public feels about that next, you know, our next council meeting, comments. We've already heard from both for and against it, but, you know, some of us won't be sitting on this council next year, and some of us will be. So, you know, it's something that needs to be considered.
Well, and you do always have the option, you can do the truth in taxation process and not increase the tax rate. So you can go through the education, the hearings, and things like that, and leave that option open, but not increase the taxes. You don't have to start it with the idea in mind of increasing it. That's always an option, although it's not a particularly fun process, because there's more public hearings, more notices.
Never fun to raise taxes, but it's.
Right, but I think you're spot on. At some point, the city's gonna need to look at it, where we haven't done anything since 2006, and essentially we've been relying on sales tax to carry us for the past 15 years or whatever it's been, so.
Okay. Next item is discussion and action to recess council meeting to enter into an RDA meeting.
Mayor, I move that we recess council meeting and move into the RDA meeting.
Second. It's been moved that we move in the RDA meeting. It's been seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, RDA meeting now was, excuse me, convened. And discussion or action to consider an ordinance approving the North Ogden City RDA tentative budget for fiscal year 2019 and 2020. Presenter will be Evan Nelson, our finance director.
Thanks, Mayor. We include the RDA and the CDA budgets in the same packet with the rest of our funds, but they are technically budgets of a separate entity, and so we approve them in a separate meeting like we're doing. So the redevelopment agency approves the budget for the redevelopment fund, which is for a certain area in the city, the redevelopment area, and then they approve a separate budget for the community development area, which is a different area within the city. So the redevelopment fund, we're proposing budgeted revenues of $700,000. This is the fund that we use to pay the debt on the aquatic center, and so part of the expenditures go toward that. Some of the expenditures go toward the beautification efforts along Washington Boulevard. Some of it goes to the street lighting projects that we have been doing. The current debt on the aquatic center is about $1.5 million. And so we're slowly paying that off. 2025 is scheduled to be the last debt payment on the aquatic center. So that's the summary of the RDA fund. The CDA fund is newer than the RDA fund and has not yet started to receive tax increment revenue. So the CDA fund has borrowed $400,000 from the RDA fund, which will be paid back in future years. This coming fiscal year, the budget that we're talking about, we expect will be, well, it is the first year that we will receive property tax increment in the CDA fund. We're not exactly sure how much that will be, but we're estimating $20,000. And we're not programming to spend that, just so we can see how much money actually comes in. But that fund should start, the money should start flowing, and then we'll be able to eventually pay the debt back to the RDA fund. So those are the proposed budgets for the redevelopment agency. We have an ordinance for this budget as well, but I guess I blew it. I have several incorrect dates in that ordinance, Annette. I don't know if you have a copy of that on the computer. Some of the dates from the previous year. 1920.
So this is the hearing date.
That looks good.
Is this the
That's correct.
June 11th.
14th of May?
I had already changed them.
Oh, okay. So the copy I have is wrong, but thank you, Annette. You saved us. So would propose approval of the RDA budget using this ordinance.
Ordinance number on this one.
RDA 2019-07.
Any questions or discussion from the council?
John, just for the sake of those in the audience that haven't had a chance to maybe see all this, could you go back to the RDA budget page and just pause on the expenditures for just a moment, please?
In the redevelopment area?
Yes. Just so that everybody has a chance to take a look at it. Thank you, John. Mayor, I'd move that we approve RDA, ordinance RDA 2019-07, approving the North Ogden City RDA tentative budget for fiscal year 2019-2020.
There's been a motion by Councilman Swanson to approve RDA 2019-07, the tentative budget for North Ogden City Redevelopment Agency.
Second.
I have a second by Councilwoman Stoker. Begin the voting with Councilman Barker,
Yes.
Councilman Severine,
Yes.
Councilman Turner,
Yes.
Councilwoman Stoker,
Yes.
Councilman Swanson.
Yes.
Motion passes. Next item is discussion or action to adjourn the RDA and reconvene in the council meeting.
I'll make a motion that we adjourn RDA and reconvene as a council.
Okay, there's been a motion made by Councilman Barker to adjourn the RDA and reconvene in council meeting.
Second?
And second by Councilman Swanson. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Next item is discussion and/or action to consider resolution amending the consolidated fee schedule. Presenter will be Evan Nelson, Finance Director.
We typically update our fee schedule each year as toward the end of the budget process. And we're actually planning to do that in June, but we had some fees that we needed to bring to propose sooner than that. So tonight we're going to discuss and propose approval of revised fees related to the Aquatic Center, related to field rentals, summer camps, and then sewer impact fees. So I'll talk about the sewer impact fees and then invite Tiffany Staley to talk about those that are related to Parks and Recreation. So the city collects sewer impact fees for Central Weber Sewer District when we process building permits, and the district is increasing their fee from $2,333 to $2,395. And their effective date is May 26th, 2019. And so we'd just like to propose updating our fee schedule to reflect that change. The rest of this fee schedule is proposed to be effective as of today, except for this item. We'll give it an effective date of May 26th, 2019. So that's the sewer district item, and we'll let Tiffany tackle the others.
All right. What order? So first up is the aquatic center fees. So we talked a little bit ago as we were discussing revenues and expenditures about ways that we could help close that gap for the aquatic center. And we discussed a 50-cent increase for admissions for the aquatic center, and those rates are displayed here. We would also like to bring back to you an adjustment of rates for swimming lessons, for group reservations, and season passes, but they have already been sold for this current year, so we'd like to wait until October to do that for the next aquatic center season. So that's for the aquatic center. The next one is for field use fees. Right now, we currently have a $10 per hour field use fee, or $1.50 per participant for organizations, or $400, whichever of the two of those is greater. We've run into a couple issues, one in particular this season that we kind of made us take a new look at this. We had an organization who had reserved with us with the $1.50 per participant fee. They had booked their reservation, and then we had another group come in and reserve a different time slot that was available. This ended with a conflict on the field, and I had to go out and clarify who actually had the field reserved. It was the second group that had come in after the first larger group had made their reservations. That evening, I got an email from the original larger group who, in a nutshell, booked out every hour of every park available. And all of this was done at the $1.50 per participant fee. And we looked at that and said, that's not going to work. So our proposal will prevent this by just charging a per hour fee. It also helps us because I don't have participant lists for these organizations. So if they tell me there's 100 participants, I believe them. If they tell me there's 500 participants, I believe them. This per hour rate changes that, and there's no need for me to wonder how many participants they have. So that proposal for you is that hours 1 to 50 that are booked are charged at $10 an hour. Hours 51 to 90 are charged at $5 per hour. Hours 91 to 1,000 are charged at $1 per hour, and hours 1,001 and above are charged at 50 cents per hour. So to see how that would work out on the bottom of this staff sheet, I have some sample reservations.
Just real quick, if you scroll up, there's a typo. It says hours 101 to 1,000. So we got to just clarify something there, because you said from 91 to 1,000. So we got
Yes.
about 10
Those hours are free.
hours that are free.
So
yeah.
I've got
So-
the most
So
updated one that I have.
just so if we're voting on this document, we just need to fix that.
Okay, yep, I have got the corrected one in front of me, so I will make sure that that's right there. It is 51 to 90, 91 to 1,000, and 1,001 and above. So an example of that, like a family reunion that wanted to book soccer fields for games and activities for 2 hours, 1 p.m. to 3 p.m., would be $20. A neighborhood that wanted to have a baseball and barbecue night for 4 hours on an evening on Saturday, 4 hours would be $40. A small soccer league requests Sunday field use for games at one park from 11 to 4 through the month of March, 20 hours, $200. A baseball organization would like to reserve our fields for games for 2 months, 2 nights a week from 5 to 7 p.m. That's 32 hours, $320. A medium soccer league requests field use for games and practices at one park, 3 hours per day, 6 days per week for 2 months. That's 144 hours, $754. And a large soccer organization requests games and practice reservations at 8 different fields over 3 months, 6 days a week. That's 2,000 hours for $2,110. So those are just, I picked numbers to give you an idea of how those rates would fall for different field use. And then the same as in the past, all unreserved fields are open to the public for use at any time. At the rates that we're proposing, field use would increase for organizations that have been previously paying the $1.50 per player fee. But we feel like the rates that they would be increasing to are more appropriate to help us maintain the fields and do repairs, while still remaining affordable for those organizations. So that's field use fees.
So Tiffany, real quick, the field use is the field, not the Boweries.
Correct. Yep. This is the playing field, like a soccer field or a baseball field.
So would, sorry, are you done, Carl?
No, that's
Sorry. Would this proposal affect this group that's effectively locked up the parks
That's correct.
for the summer, so they would have to rethink their
Yes.
process or what they want
Instead
to do?
of just reserving everything because their rate stays the same at $1.50 per person, they are paying per hour for their reservations. And the difference in, so another example, the difference in, I don't know if I have those ones in here. Yes, I do. So spring 19, their original reservation was $14.50 hours. And then they came back with a reservation that was $39.50 hours. And that difference would cost them about $2,000. So they would need to really consider whether or not they wanted to actually book all of those hours. We think it provides an opportunity for residents and other smaller groups to reserve and use the fields as well by doing it this way. And then the last one, we would like to add some arts camps to our recreation programs. Theater, acting, singing, those kinds of arts. And so the rate for that would be between $80 and $120 depending on the type of camp and when it would be. So we just wanted to add that into the schedule.
Mayor, question?
Yes.
Going back to the parks thing, what the one organization did really struck me. Looking at your proposed hours, do you feel it makes us unaffordable if we just leave the 101 and above at $1 per hour?
Yes, and the reason for that is because the largest organizations that play in our city also service the largest number of kids in our city. And so we feel like the change that we've initiated will just about triple what they've been paying. And we feel like it will still remain affordable, but it will help cover our costs. If it gets much more expensive than that, I think we'll start to price these kids out, and that's not the goal of what we're doing. We wanted to just cover our costs for seed, sod, aeration, and chemicals, but make it so that it was equitable for anybody who wanted to reserve a field.
How does this compare to other cities around us with their parks? and
Pleasant View,
fields?
our neighbor, does $10 per hour, and that's all. And so
That's why everybody wants to use our parks, because they can do it
correct.
for less money.
that's correct. So they do $10 per hour, that's all, and it makes their fields unaffordable.
So are there, just out of curiosity, Tiffany, because I could see this one being one where people are going to ask, questions of us about this. Are there parks that, and maybe it's just kind of semantics here, but as I'm looking at that one paragraph about the running into a situation in spring, the last sentence says, "This request, however, would make certain that they are the only organization on the fields. It makes it difficult for residents and other organizations to practice or use field space." So what we're trying to do is to say, we're gonna increase the price. Hopefully they'll see that, and parks will still be available to the residents.
That's correct. It's
Don't?
more of a use what you need and not what you don't need. And pay for it by the hour so that we're not concerned with how many kids do you actually have playing this time or not. And it also leaves us with a pay to play. You book it when you reserve it, not after the fact, and you've got all your registrations and it's taken care of.
So is it like what do they call it, like La Roca or something like that? Is it a major organization like that that's coming in?
Yes.
I don't think any organization should be able to manipulate all the parks.
And we don't either, and that's why this is before you today.
But wonder if they came in and said, okay,
I don't think an organization could afford that. I haven't seen one yet that can.
okay.
So there's still the potential to do that, and we would probably red flag it if they came in. But our issue was when they saw another organization there on field time that they had not reserved, they came in and asked on their $1.50 per participant to book the entire field. And they tried to act as the city in that they would allow the other organizations to use their booked field time. And we didn't agree with that.
And so what does Pleasant View City do different?
They do it you get online and you reserve it hour by hour at $10 an hour.
What does Harrisville do?
I haven't checked with them. I don't know if they have soccer playing on their fields.
I'll be interesting to see what happens. I'll be interested to see.
Any other questions for Tiffany?
I'm with Blake. I'd like to see what happens. Personally, just looking at it, and it'll just be interesting to see. I wouldn't want to go below the $1 per hour.
Some of those organizations, they've got some serious money behind them.
Well, and what ends up happening is our fields take all the abuse. We take all the headache and all the abuse, and the other cities know that and have priced them out of their cities so that they come and beat up our parks.
And I think in talking with Pleasant View, they're doing it at a $10 an hour, just flat rate, was to avoid the headache of having to help schedule the organizations. We like helping to schedule those organizations on our field because it gives us an opportunity to know who's where and who's using what. And you can find that out. Pleasant View does it through their Sports Site software system. But we also look at it and we realize that these organizations that are coming in here, especially for soccer, are servicing North Ogden. They're servicing the residents here and the children that play here. And, when somebody has to go in, a volunteer for their organization, and book out 2,000 hours, one click at a time, that's a pain, to say the least. And we want these kids to have a program where they can play, and so that's why we've got it where we're at.
Will you maybe send out an email or something that just, I'd be curious to see what happens.
Sure.
Would
Yeah,
you please?
absolutely.
That would be very kind of you.
Yep, we've discussed, we have organizations that are ready to play come fall, and we've been in contact with them. They've asked about field reservations, but we think that this will make it so that, and another example is coaches. want to have a dedicated practice time in a certain place, and their organization hasn't booked those fields, and they would come in and they would pay to reserve a field on their own for practice. And that's actually what ran into this larger organization, was a coach wanting practice time on their own, and we felt like that should be an opportunity, and something that should be available.
So I got a quick question. Since I don't play this sport, what constitutes one field?
One
'Cause
field is
Orton
one.
is like, Orton Park has a lot of fields.
That's a good question. Orton Park is divided into quadrants.
Okay.
So we have,
I just curious if
Yeah.
they could book all of Orton
yeah,
for $10.
no, there are 4 quadrants, so they can book it in quarters.
Thanks.
Good questions, council. Thank you. Any others?
Thanks for all you do, Tiffany.
Thank you, Tiffany.
Resolution number for that?
01-2019.
Mayor, I'd move that we approve Resolution 01-2019, amending the consolidated fee schedule as discussed.
Is that 01 or 05?
What's the number again?
01.
01, okay. Got ahead of myself there. Okay, been a motion to approve the resolution amending the consolidated fee schedule 01-2019 by Councilman Swanson,
I'll second it.
and second by Councilman Barker. Begin the voting with Councilman Severie,
Yes.
Councilman Turner,
Yes.
Councilwoman Stoker,
Yes.
Councilman Swanson.
Yes.
Councilman Barker.
Yes.
Motion passes. Thank you. Next item, we have a presentation of quarterly financial report. Our presenter will be Evan Nelson, our finance director. You're on the stage tonight.
Yeah, this is the last one for me. So we present the quarterly financial report for the quarter ending in March 2019. In your packet, there's a staff report. There's a summary sheet that shows some graphs, and then the detailed report that shows the various city funds and where we are as of the end of March. So, as you know, we like to track sales tax trends closely since they are a good indicator of the market and the economy. Our sales tax revenues are slightly ahead of our projections. So at the sales tax numbers are actually through April, but through April we have $17,794 ahead of what our projections show, which is just under 1% ahead. So it's not a huge margin, but at least we're in the positive on that. When we compare these current year numbers to last year, we're $88,000 ahead of where we were last year at this time. So that's a positive trend. We continue to watch that. I'm sure you've seen a lot of things in the news. We get different reports on employment and GDP and those sorts of things. We've seen some positive trends that way. Obviously, the trade deals are having an effect upon the economy too. So there's positive and negative, and it seems to change from day to day. So we'll continue to watch those things, and if we need to make adjustments, then we'll bring things back to the council. So the next graph is showing a comparison of revenues and expenditures, percent of budget by fund, with the year 75% elapsed. So on this graph, we particularly look at the funds where the expenditures exceed revenues and try to figure out what's happening or why that's happening. And I made some notes in the staff report with a few explanations. So in the capital improvement fund, some of the revenues from the state have not yet been received. That's related to the White Rock debris basin. We have a grant for that, so. And then we also have some revenues that are budgeted to be transferred into the capital improvement fund, and we just haven't performed those transfers yet. In the water fund, we have expenditures exceeding revenues. Anytime we budget to use fund balance, we end up with expenditures exceeding revenues because we don't actually recognize use of fund balance as a revenue, but we have to budget it as a revenue. And so the net effect is that the fund balance goes down, but on the reports it looks as if the expenditures are exceeding the revenues, when in reality we're utilizing fund balance to make up the difference. So that's the case in several of the funds because of our planned use of those available funds.
And council, so that's where the depreciation money goes, is into that fund, which is then spent on those capital projects. So these expenditures that exceed revenues are basically spending previous years where revenues exceeded expenditures to save up for the projects that we did this year. So it's normal.
It's revenue that was already recognized in a previous year, so we don't recognize it as revenue again. Let's see. In the water fund, we also have higher than anticipated costs for new meter connections, which I guess we just attribute that to the growth and the number of permits that we've been seeing lately. In the stormwater fund, we have some grant revenue that we have not received yet. In the motor pool fund, we recognize the revenues in the motor pool fund each month throughout the year because it's funded using transfers from other funds. But most of our expenditures in the motor pool funds happen at the beginning of the year. So those numbers should come into line as we near the end of the fiscal year. So in those, I don't have any strong concerns about where those are right now. I think we're in good shape in those funds. In the general fund, that's the third graph on the sheet. There are a few departments that are just slightly over budget, but I think those will also come into line as we get to the end of the fiscal year. The non-departmental in particular has large expenditures related to the insurance. That's a one-time annual cost, and so that department always shoots up high early on, but it should be under budget by the end of the fiscal year.
So if that, just to rephrase that, it means that at the 75% mark of the year, those departments have spent more than 75% of the funds, but that doesn't mean the trend's going to continue. Like Evan said, with the non-departmental, in July, we spend all of our insurance money up front, and by the end of the year, it comes down to where non-departmental ends up under budget for the whole year. It's just a way for department heads, especially, to track expenses. We look at how far through the year we are, how much of the salaries we spent, and things like that. So it's nothing to be alarmed about until the end of the year. If we were over budget on a fund, then that would be something to look into the reasons why.
And with that said, we are planning to come back to the council with proposed amendments to the current year budget, as we have typically done in June. And so we'll be reviewing our latest financial reports and bring some proposed changes back to you for your consideration. Do you have any questions on the quarterly financial report? Okay.
Everything's good. Good presentation. Thank you.
Thanks.
Excuse me. Discussion and consideration on the Brown, Barker, and Bates annexation for property located at approximately 1100 East, 2600 North. Presenter will be Annette Spenlove, our city recorder, HR director.
Mayor and council, this annexation started and came before you on March 20th, 2019, when the Brown, Parker, Bates submitted their application. It's approximately 23.87 acres. Like Mayor said, it's located at 1100 East, 2600 North. We've got Exhibit B up there to show you that. The annexation process requires the City Council to accept the petition for annexation so that the annexation process can begin, which was done on March 26th. Weber County Surveyor has reviewed the annexation plat map and approved it. The property is within the North Ogden City Annexation Declaration Policy. The petitioner is requesting an R110 zone, which the Planning Commission has recommended also. They did that on April 17th. The law requires that the city give notice of an annexation for 3 consecutive weeks, no later than 10 days after the council receives notice of certification, which was certified by myself on April 3rd, 2019. A public hearing was noticed on May 5th, with hearing to be held tonight. Written protests to this annexation were to be filed by May 5th, and there were no written protests that we've received as of this date. The annexation meets all the qualifications, and there's an ordinance 2019-08 before the City Council for your consideration. And is there any questions?
It's open for a public hearing on this particular item. Seeing none, council, a discussion and or action to consider an ordinance annexing Brown, Parker, and Bates property,
Question, Mayor?
2018-08.
John, you may know, Lauren, you may know the answer to this question. Immediately to the east, the existing homes, are those R110?
Yes, I can pull up the map for you if
That'd be
you'd
great.
like.
Would you please?
That was gonna be my question. To the west is R120. How do they line up?
RE20?
RE20. Yeah, that one.
See, that's Coldwater. That should be R110.
Well, this one's Barker Park. Is
Right.
RE20.
But the one on that's
And then,
east.
yep, this one over here is.
Sorry, this mouse is a little touchy. So it's this area right here. So this is R110, and this is RE20.
Council, we also have every utility review this in the city, and our sanitary sewer department had one question, and they'll bring that up on their technical review as to where the sewer lines can go.
Any other questions or discussion? And I would entertain a motion to approve the zoning.
Mayor, I'd make a motion that we approve the annexation into the Barker, Parker, and Bates property, the R110 zone. We approve that annexation.
That's 2018-08.
That's right, I was looking at the, yeah.
2019.
2019, sorry.
Number is 2019.
Oh, you're behind the day ahead. There's been a motion by Councilwoman Stoker that the consideration of the annexation of the property of Brown, Parker, Bates be approved. And that's ordinance number 2019-08. Do I have a second on that?
Can I ask one question first?
Okay.
We're not really doing the zoning today, are we? The R110? Does that have to be part of the motion? Because it's not.
When you annex it in, you have to apply a zone to
Okay.
it.
All right. That's my question. Then I'll second it.
Okay, it's been seconded by Councilman Barker. Any other discussion or question? If not, voting, Councilman Turner,
Yes.
Councilwoman Stoker,
Yes.
Councilman Swanson.
Yes.
Councilman Barker.
Yes.
Councilman Severie.
Yes.
Motion passes. Next item is discussion or action to consider agreement, or, pardon me, wait a minute, we're getting ahead of ourselves. Discussion or action to consider accepting Marion annexation position to start the annexation process for property located at 1100 East and 4400 North. Presenter will be Annette Spenlow, our city recorder, HR director.
Mayor and council, Randy Marriott and Cammy Marriott submitted an application petitioning for annexation of approximately 200.62 acres, and that is located at approximately 4300 North and 850 East. As required by state code, the Weber County Surveyor has reviewed the annexation plat map and finds it to be a correct plat. The property being proposed for annexation is within North Ogden City's annexation declaration policy map. The petitioner is requesting an MPC-NC zone, which the Planning Commission will review and make recommendations to the City Council at a later date. The petitioner meets all the requirements to start the annexation process, and it is recommended the City Council accepts the petition to start the annexation process. A typical annexation takes 3 to 4 months, due mainly to the certification of the petition, 3 weeks noticing and all those things, notices, and we suspect that this one will take a little longer because it's in our hillside protection zone and just all those things involved.
And council, so this one is dissimilar from the previous one. This one's at the very beginning of the process where they've submitted paperwork and all the council is doing is verifying that the paperwork has been received. That starts the process with the lieutenant's governor's office and things. And then a recommendation on the zone will happen from the planning commission in the coming months and the council as well.
So tonight, you're just accepting the petition to process.
Yes, Councilman Swanson.
John, would you, for those who may not know, attending tonight, would you describe what the MPC NC zone is?
So the MPC zone is the master plan community zone. And essentially, it allows for some flexibility in the zoning ordinance where the council can look at a piece of property and make recommendations. A good example of this, and I'll use an example that's not in our city, is in areas of near Camas over by Park City. They use this type of a zone to preserve open space. Where they say your density in this area would have been 2 units to the acre, but if you will put them all on these 20 acres and leave these other 80 open, we'll let you do that. And so it allows for some flexibility in design. We have used the MPC zone, not the, what do they call it, the NC. So we've used it for the Village at Prominence Point and Cherry Springs Villas, as well as the potential for Cooperstown. This would be dissimilar from those in that these would, the majority of these dwellings would likely not be connected units. They would be single-family, just deconnected buildings. But there's likely going to need to be some considerations for hillside slopes, drainage. There'll be a lot of trails that I think will be likely required as part of this. That's part of the reason that Annette mentioned this zone will not, or this annexation will not be done in 90 days. Because I think there needs to be a lot more work. In particular, I think this piece is going to be part of the discussion with the General Plan Review Committee, who, as you know, we have to open it back up to look at some things that the state's having us look at in our general plan. And this is one of those pieces that's will be talked about for the future because this wasn't I think it was brushed upon in the general plan, but it wasn't in the city, and so it wasn't focused on. And now we'd actually be able to use the general plan committee to help provide that long-term vision to the council and use that input in establishing what this zone actually means. So there's a long explanation to a short question.
So what did
Council,
NC stand for?
The NC is what we as staff put on there, just for North Oaks Cove, so we could.
Okay.
So it just differentiates it from, so the other, like Village at Prominence Point is MPC-VPP. The NC might get changed to something else, depending on what that part of the city's gonna be called. We've always called it the North Cove or the North Oaks Cove. It likely might receive a different name depending on what the developer wants to call it.
And this just starts the process. We're not agreeing to the annexation, and we're not applying a zone at this time.
Right,
Accepting the application.
Yep.
yeah,
I just want it to be clear that that's what we're doing.
yeah.
Any other questions or discussion?
Is that an ordinance number?
No.
Just a motion? Mayor, I'd move that we accept the Marriott annexation petition to start the annexation process with the property located at approximately 1100 East and 4400 North.
There's been a motion by Councilman Swanson to consider accepting the Marriott annexation petition to start the annexation process for property located 1100 East and 4400 North.
Second.
Seconded by Councilman Turner.
Focusing on something.
Any other questions or discussion? We'll begin the voting with Councilwoman Stoker,
Yes.
Councilman Swanson,
Yes?
Councilman Barker,
Yes.
Councilman Severie,
Yes.
Councilman Turner.
Yes.
Motion passes. Next item, discussion or action to consider an agreement with Connection Magazine for Cherry Days brochure. Presenter will be John Call, our administrative attorney.
So, council, as in years past, we are planning to do another Cherry Days insert in the monthly Connection magazine. With that, the cost for that typically it's less than what we'd pay. Tiffany is here who can answer questions, but it's less than what we'd pay if we published it separately, as well as we get full color on all pages. Is that correct, Tiffany? Whereas before we used to get a color front and back, but everything inside would be black and white. This is just an addendum to the original agreement from 2016 that allows us to use them as the provider for that and pay them based on their cost. So the additional costs they incur because of that. This year, I believe we're expecting it to be, put it in my staff report, but I forgot the number, around $6,900. Before we were doing the magazine, or before we had the Connection publication, I believe it was $9,000. Does that sound right, Tiffany? When we published on our own? So, we're saving 2 to 3, maybe even 4 with the way some costs have gone up. And so, but this helps us bring into better compliance with our purchasing policies and things, to amend this as part of the contract. So, any questions about that?
I would entertain a motion and to consider the agreement for the Connection Magazine to produce the Cherry Days brochure.
I'd recommend that we accept the agreement with Connection Magazine for the Cherry Days brochure.
It's got an agreement number.
Oh, it has an agreement, okay. What's the agreement number?
A8-2016.
A8.
B 2019, excuse me.
What was it again?
Oh, wait.
A8-2019, Addendum 2.
Great, that's a lot to remember.